Melissa, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Gavin.
So I'm curious, how did you get interested in startups all those years ago?
I think I was always an entrepreneur at heart, but I was never entrepreneurial. And so I think when I was in, like, even thinking back to elementary school, I would make like little origami cranes and try to sell them at school. So I think that was always in me. And I did work for a bunch of companies. And then on the side, I would try to start things with friends, but never really materialized because I wasn't really focused on it. But more so, like, I'm not from a family of entrepreneurs, so I don't really know what that means. But it really wasn't until the last company I worked for, which was SAP, that I was like, I really hate being an employee. And that was when I was like, okay, I need to try to do something on my own. And that was about 12 years ago. So I don't think I was like particularly startups. Like when I quit SAP, like the word startups wasn't even like known to me. I just thought like I'm going to quit and start my own company. And then I learned through meetups that like if you have a tech company, it's called a startup.
Cool. Yeah. I think for me, when I realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur, it was more about having control. Like I hated
Mm,
having a boss and not
yeah.
having complete control of my destiny. So I think that's what led me. Like startups was the way for me to get that freedom almost.
Yeah, I mean, I think freedom, and like I think everybody defines that differently, but freedom is definitely something that has always been very important to me. But that's also why I work for small companies before SAP.
Mm.
And I actually only work for SAP because I'm like, okay, if one day I want to have a big company, I should learn how it's structured and how it's run. And then I went into it and I'm like, I absolutely hate this.
So I've listened to a couple of other podcasts that you've been on recently. We shared the Spacio story, and it really sounds like it was one a long struggle for you. So after you sold the company, what was it that made you want to do it all over again, like create another startup from scratch?
I mean, to be honest with you, we sold Spacio for life-changing money. Like absolutely, it changed everything. Because I was also struggling for 8 9 years with nothing. Like I never had a regular salary. Like even if I did, it was super low, and then I would always cut my own salary to pay someone else. Um, but we didn't sell it for retirement level money. And I want to say 36 at the time. And I knew that whatever I would get myself into, it's another 5 years, right? Like you can have all the experience behind you, but there is no shortcut, right? Like you can only build technology as quickly as like your man hours, right? And based on how many people you can have on board. So I wanted to get something going right away because I just don't want to work like for many more years. I think like by the time I'm 40, I would want to be working because I want to, not because I have to. And that was really the driving decision. It wasn't like, let's put myself through this again. Like if I didn't have to, I wouldn't.
Cool. So with eWebinar, your new startup, how did you get the idea? Like, was it something that you were struggling with before? And did you validate other ideas before you decided to pursue eWebinar?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. So for some context, eWebinar is a platform that saves people from doing the same webinar over and over again. So you can imagine your sales demos, your onboarding, your customer training, feature updates, things like that. Everything you might be running on Zoom right now, we take a video, we deliver it like a webinar, so you can run 100 of them a month without a live host. So this was absolutely something that I struggled with Spacio every single day. So I was bootstrapped in that one as well. You can imagine like I was everything except for code. So I was like admin, accountant, sales, customer success. So you can imagine like all of the webinars I was doing on GoToWebinar and then Zoom, like, but all of these were exactly the same. And at the same time, I was digital nomading. So not only was I doing multiple back to back repetitive webinars to make sure that my new customers would adopt the platform, because otherwise they would churn. And that would be a big problem for payroll. I was also doing them on different time zones. So every single day I was with Spacio, I'm like, why can't there be a product that would take my perfect video, deliver it like a webinar? Because people don't like, especially for like training and onboarding, they don't go to YouTube, right? Like they don't like your knowledge base. They want to go to a webinar. They want to interact. So I was dreaming up this product that would allow me to do my job while I could have more fun and do literally anything else but the same webinar over again. Because sometimes like 30 people would sign up and like one person would show up. And it's actually very disheartening and like just mentally exhausting to be the person that runs that. And I did try other solutions back then, but nothing was as elegant as I wanted it to be. And nothing had that like asynchronous chat feature that allows you to hop in to respond live if you are there, but respond later by email, just like an intercom or a Zendesk. So all the features that we had, all the features we have now even are like things that I have dreamt up that I wish I had there. So I didn't come out of Spacio thinking, okay, this is the one that I want to do, because I do think that I think there's a time in your life where like experience kind of hinders you. Right. So
Yeah.
I had struggled so much with Spacio that I was like, okay, do I really want to do this again? And if I were going to do this again, like, is this the right idea? And I think there's a lot of ideas that sound great, especially like when people are just like pumping them out, right? Like it's fun to like bounce ideas around. But once you do more research, you dig into it a little bit, it all kind of falls apart, right? Because then you realize, okay, someone else is doing it better than me, or I don't have experience in this, or I just don't have the expertise to sell to that audience, or something like that. So what I actually did, because I was in a place in my life where I could start asking myself, okay, what is it that really makes me happy? Not what is the next job I want. So I really sat down and I thought, okay, what are the driving forces of my happiness? And I made a list of non-negotiables, things like having a fully remote team, not having any employees, being able to create a product or sell a product that is meaningful to me, that reflects who I am, but also to have a product that could be sold 100% through the internet and not through conferences. Because with Spacio, I was always like first quarter, I would just be flying around in a conference and like setting up booths and things like that. So eWebinar was the one idea that kept coming back to me because it fit all those things. So in a sense, it was like the most practical idea, but it actually, I think, aligns most with who I am and what makes me happy.
So I'm curious just to find out, because we have a lot of like non-technical founders listening to this show. And often people ask me like how they can start a business from just an idea if they aren't technical. So can you walk me through like how you took that idea as a non-technical founder and kind of got that developed or got that built? Did you outsource development? Did you bring on a CTO? Like how did you actually get the product off the ground?
Yeah, that is a super interesting question. And honestly, like it is such a hard one to solve. I would say, like, having spent almost a decade in tech, like I'm not technical. I don't know coding languages and I don't know how things work. I do know that all code is not built the same way. Like,
Yeah.
and so I do know that like finding your 1% coder to be your co-founder is like one of the hardest challenges that you could have. But also with me, I was so tired of having a co-founder, to be honest. My ex co-founder, like we were such good friends, and like he was amazing. He was an amazing engineer, but he was not a great CTO, and he was not a great co-founder in a sense. And he knew that, and we had lots of conversations about this. So I was so sick of struggling with those things that I came into eWebinar thinking, I don't need a co-founder. Like I've got some money now. I sold my company. I could just do this on my own. So what I did was I hired a dev shop that I wanted to build the first version of the product. So I spec'd out the first version of the product. Not like technically, but I was like, okay, these are the things that I would want to see. And then I would have them actually build it. But the idea, because I didn't want any employees coming into this one, I wanted a fully like remote outsourced team. The idea was always to have them build the first version and then transfer it to like Vietnam, like a dev shop in Vietnam. And that was where our permanent developers were going to be. And so I hired this dev shop, which was also a friend's dev shop. Don't work with your friends. So that's
Good
lesson
advice.
learned there. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. And I think a lot of times it's not like my fault or their fault. It's like when you have a tech company and you want to build a product, like there is so much heavy lifting that if you don't have someone thinking about this 24/7 without spending more money per hour, it's it's just really hard to get it off the ground. And we wanted a full product. There wasn't going to be a beta. There wasn't going to be an alpha. Like, I wanted a product that we could charge people from day one. And so I wanted a full product, and with the website and everything, right? I wanted our website to look like we were already an established company from day one. So a lot of work had to go into that. And I think we both underestimated really what it took. And at the time, my partner, my life partner, David, we were like stuck in Hawaii during COVID. He was always like the CTO, like the kind of pseudo CTO that was going to like see how this code was built, and he was going to be the advisor to kind of transfer it to the Vietnam team. But then he was like, "Oh, this is not built right. This is not built right." And I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't know how to fix this. Also, like, this is my friend's dev shop. Like, if he's telling me that this is being done, like, I have to trust him. Why don't you go in and fix it? And out of frustration, he goes in, he starts coding, and I'm like, wait a second, like, you can really code. Like, he was always a fractional CTO for someone else, but we never really talked about work in that way. And like, working with developers, like, what good code is when something just works. And after that, I'm like, well, why am I paying this dev shop and they're not really delivering, and you can actually code? And that was like a year into the project. So I was like, why don't we end our relationship there? Because at the time, like, the dev shop was also sinking in too many resources to try to make this happen. But so we were both losing, right? I wasn't getting what I want, and they were trying like hard to kind of fulfill that contract. So we had the hard conversation with them. We ended our relationship with them. And then I brought David in as my CTO and co-founder. So it turns out you can't build a tech company without a CTO. So that was my journey. But I would say, like, just get really good at doing what you do as a CEO, right? Like, if you're not a technical co-founder, because you have to have something to offer as well. Yep. Right. And that's not free equity. I'm not saying like, hey, I'll give you 50% of your code for me, because 50% of nothing is nothing. And if your company becomes something, like, hey, equity is like toothpaste. You can't get it back in the tube.
Yeah.
So if it's the wrong partner, then you're stuck with them. And that divorce is extremely difficult. Right. So I would say, like, make sure you know what you're offering, and then find an equal partner, and then have an honest conversation about like what equity you'd want to split that makes it meaningful for them, even if they're your life partner.
Brilliant advice. It's actually funny because since setting Sendable, I've been doing some angel investing. So I'll have meetings with these non-technical founders who they're kind of outsourcing all the development, and their costs are just going crazy. Yeah. So for me, it's a red flag. Like, I, as an investor, I won't invest in a company that has outsourced development. It's just a huge risk. So I think that's great advice. I'm curious, just from your last company, Spacio, like, what lessons are you bringing with you to eWebinar now? Any lessons you've learned in the past that are going to help you kind of grow this business?
Yeah, the number one is don't build a product without customers. Like, Spacio worked out as it did, but it was like the 10th, 12th version of it that we actually got someone to pay for. And I wrote a lot about this in, my Medium account and things like that too. Like, we started with this bleeding edge product. Like, it was an open house sign-in software, and that's where it ended, but that's not where it started. It started as this like super complex consumer plus business hardware software. Like, it was like super bleeding edge, and it was like cool, but it just didn't have any adoption. So I spent many years in the real estate industry and then in real estate tech. So I thought I knew my customers, but in that scenario, like, we spent, like, I would say a good 2 years just iterating on the product before we found the product someone would pay for. And that's where all the debt came from. So, like, do not build a product and then look for customers. Like, make sure you have people that are willing to pay for this. And actually, a good litmus test is see what else is out there, right? It is such a red flag when someone's like, no one's doing this and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I would be like, no, you like, that is either that's false or you have a bad business, because whatever you're thinking about, someone has maybe tried it, or it's a version of it is already out there. So if it's not out there, like, find out why. And that was like the biggest mistake, because it just got us into like hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, like personal debt, because we were bootstrapped. So where do you think that money came from?
Crazy.
But also, like, I think the biggest lesson I took out of it was do something that makes you happy? Like, and I know that sounds like super simple, but it's really hard to achieve, because I think a lot of people create businesses or a career out of what they know. Like, I studied finance, so I'm going to be a banker. Right? I studied like engineering, so I'm going to be, I'm going to build bridges, right? But at the end of the day, like, what you study and what your experience does not have to define your career, because it's going to be super hard. So if it's going to be super hard, you might as well do something that makes you happy. And when I say do something that makes you happy, it's not like I want to do X. Like, it doesn't have to be so specific, right? It could be, some of the non-negotiables that I mentioned, like I have to have a fully remote team, right? I have to have a product that can be sold off the internet. So it can't be, an enterprise level product. Like, it can be just general guidelines like that. And that's what I didn't do, because I was always in the real estate business. And I was like, okay, well, I quit SAP, so I could just like build technology for real estate. But like, it was my experience and my knowledge, but it was not like where my happiness was. So coming into this, like I got a chance to change that. And if anyone listening, like if you're even just thinking about an idea, like I would say, like, start with a question, okay, like what really makes me happy? But even if you have a business right now, it doesn't mean that you can't create some of those boundaries today.
So back to what you're saying about validating with customers, that you didn't speak to customers before you started building. How are you doing it differently now with eWebinar? Are you speaking to customers as you build? Because I know you mentioned you had your own problem you wanted to solve.
Yeah.
But when did you bring in customers into that journey?
Actually, I did not talk to any customers, but I was kind of in a unique position, right? So my background's in sales. I've always been in sales. So I would say one of my strongest skill sets is to sell something that doesn't exist today, to either get a yes or a no. Because I think like, and this is the reason why I don't believe in betas, or I don't believe in pilot projects. Because when you put somebody in a room, or a group of people in a room, to critique something, like, they're gonna critique it. If I'm like, hey Gavin, do you need an automated webinar software? Like, you'd be like, no. Otherwise I would have one. Right? Like, it's hard to conceptualize, right? Yeah. So I already knew, just from my own experience of wanting this product, that it exists. And I would, and for years, I would be at these conferences talking to my peers, and we'd all complain about the same thing. So either you have like a massive support team, or you have a massive support team, or you're still not doing enough of these, or you have a small team like me, and you're just finding makeshift solutions, right? You're like, okay, people don't like videos, but a video is what you're getting, right? Or like, I'm just gonna close this deal and then figure it out later. But at the same time, like, the biggest validation was there were products out there already with good customer bases, highly engaged customers. I just wanted to build a different version of what was out there, right? And that was the biggest validation. I didn't need somebody telling me, hey, like, there's a need for an automated webinar software. I knew that an automated webinar software designed for small, medium, and maybe large enterprise does not exist in the way that I want it to. So I knew that talking to customers would also like cloud my judgment. And I think that's one of the hardest things as a founder, isn't it? Like, to ask for advice, but be picky about what you receive and what you just leave behind you, right? Like, you just have to have so much conviction in what you're doing, but also be okay that like, you're the only one that has to live with the consequence. And if you ask 10 people for what their advice is, they're going to give you 10 different ideas. And then you're going to go home thinking like, oh, maybe I didn't think of these things. So nobody saw eWebinar until like July 1st, 2020, like the first day that we put it out there. And we started charging like our first customer.
So did you get customers on day one? Like, how soon after you launched did you get your first customer?
Yeah. So when we launched, and it was like, we launched with a set of features that like I thought solutions out there were missing. And of course we didn't have feature parity, right? Like, you're never going to, because you've just like, we built it for a year and a half before we put it out there. Other people has been around for like 5 to 10 years. So you're not going to have feature parity, but we were very aware of what we wanted our 10 times feature to be, right? As Jason Lemkin puts it, like, it's the one feature that people sign up like because you have it and someone else doesn't. So we were like very, very aware that like the chat system that we had was going to be it. And then we gave up a lot of other things. So on day one, we couldn't charge our customers because we didn't have Stripe integrated. Like we just didn't have time. And I was like, okay, we're gonna put this out there. Otherwise, like it already looks great. And I was still working for Spacio at the time, so we could use it for our own training. Like that was actually the first use case. So what I did was I made a list of everyone I had worked with or I knew, like my friends, my vendor friends, that I thought could use this product, put it in a Google Sheet. And I went down to every single one of them to set up call, tell them what I was doing, and then get their buy-in, ask if they wanted to try it. And I would say, hey, if you sign up for a trial now, because we're early, we're going to extend your trial from 30 days to 60 days or whatever, right? So we made the first charge date September 1st. And that would give us time to actually build Stripe in. Yeah. And then when people signed up in August, then it would be like the traditional, 30-day trial. We've since then shortened it to 14. But that's how we got our first customers was like, we basically just told them they had an extended trial and then everybody charged on September 1st. And I think we had like an 80% conversion rate.
Wow, that's pretty good. So just what you were saying about Jason Lemkin, I'm curious. So for those who haven't heard of this 10x feature sort of mindset or building something that brings in users, could you explain like how you figured out what your 10x sort of feature was? Maybe how other founders could find their own 10x feature?
Yeah, study all of your competitors like crazy. I mean, it's public, right? It's public information. You can sign up for them. They can sign up for you. There's no secret, right? And every product has their own niche set of customers. So I had it wasn't even part of my research. It was because during Spacio, I was so desperate for this kind of software. Like I signed up to literally everything I could find that would solve that problem. And none of these solutions had this kind of intercom style chat feature. And the reason is also because it is just super hard to build. Like some people have it as their standalone business. And a lot of these, kind of on-demand webinar companies, evergreen webinar companies, whatever you want to call it, they would have like only a live chat. So the webinar would be automated, but you have to be there when it's playing in order to respond. But like true automation is to be able to do something without being there. So that actually defeats the purpose. So if you don't respond when you're on the other side, then the chat kind of goes into the ether. Or they just have like this fake chat box that is actually an email. And I've used those before. So but then when someone types in it and you're not checking your email, then your response also goes through email. It doesn't go through the chat box. So it's not like an authentic webinar, like chat experience. So I just knew like from my previous life. And after like selling Spacio, I really only did like maybe 4 more weeks of research, just like making sure I really tried everything out there before I was like, okay, like this is the one thing that we have to invest time into building. And even if somebody were going to copy us, it would just take a really long time.
So I guess once you have that sort of 10x feature or that USP, I assume that made your marketing much easier. So like, did you make it the kind of focal point in your website? Like how did you take that advantage and put it to good use?
I mean, it's hard, right? Because if you haven't done your research, then you almost expect that it's there. And consumers are like so discerning right now, like me and you, right? Like how many seconds do we give something before we're like, this sucks, I'm going to delete it, right? So I would say like most people that haven't looked at this type of software would be like, yeah, of course it's in there. Like, why is it not in there? Like we have people coming in now that are like, why don't you have SMS reminders? That's standard. Like, how is that standard? It's like a mobile service, right? Like we integrate through Twilio, but they're like, why do I have to use Twilio? It's standard. So like, that's where we are as a society. So you can't say like, hey, this is my 10x feature, or like, hey, we have chat and other people don't, because your marketing can't be, we have this and other people don't, right? So what we do and how we leverage that is we like our eWebinar demo on our website is only delivered through eWebinar. So I don't do live demos because I can't, like our product is a visual experience, right? It's so when they're in our demo, then they experience that chat, right? They experience the interactivity, the branding, like, because you can also program like questions, polls, resources. So it's more like a two-way participatory experience. So then they're like, oh, okay, this is actually really cool. So they're experiencing it just as their customers are. And then they might be like, and if we are the first place they go and they do look at other things, they'll be like, oh yeah, like I looked at other things and they didn't have, I'm like, they didn't have this. Or if we're the last place they go to, they're like, oh, this is something that's unique and different. So like in the beginning, we didn't have any customer testimonials. Like now we do, like on like different features and different things that they do this with. But in the beginning, like we just have to force people into the experience, and like we still do. But we don't really put that front and center. We kind of leave it up to the prospect or the customer to kind of do their own research and experience it.
Yeah. So most second or third time founders kind of want to go bigger with each startup. So often that means fundraising. So why are you choosing to stay bootstrapped, even though you've kind of exited a business? You can very easily raise some funds. What's the reason?
Yeah, I actually just recently posted about this on LinkedIn. So we were also bootstrapped. I had two other businesses before this, also bootstrapped, and like by bootstrapping, like we did get like some investment in my previous company from a private investor that wasn't a friend. Like I didn't know this guy, but we had to because otherwise, like we would go under. And that investor helped us, pay off a lot of debt and things like that. So, but it didn't take very long for me to realize like having an investor just kind of sucks. Like all of a sudden you're reporting on stuff. Like they're asking you for like financial statements every month, or their accountant wants to audit something, or they're questioning your decisions, right? And I just kind of lost that like really my own boss kind of freedom. And then I realized I don't want to manage their expectations. And yes, like after selling a company, it does become much easier. Like if you want to raise capital, and especially 2 years ago, like everybody was writing checks, right? But I think what people don't understand, and what I came to understand also after like having so many peers in around me that have raised capital, like I don't actually know anyone who has raised capital and said like, Melissa, I can't wait to raise more capital next time. Right? Like a lot of people, like I'm gonna I'm gonna think super hard, like and like about how I want to do this. I think most people don't understand that like venture capital especially comes with a board seat, right? Like they can then determine all of your decisions. They can stop a decision, they can make a decision, right? Like, I mean, I've spent so many years building my business, so I've earned my freedom to digital nomad. I set my own hours. I don't even work before noon, right? Like I don't have any employees. I don't have a fancy office, right? Like, so I guess like I also, like having lived in New York before, also fell in the trap of thinking like, oh, venture capital means success, or getting a write up on TechCrunch means that I'm successful. Like there's this validation. And if I don't sell for 100 million, then I'm not worthy. But after years of like just seeing other people struggle with that, and then hopping on the venture train and never being able to get off, because then they force you to hire all these people. And then all of a sudden you need to raise more money to support those people, especially in a downturn. I just don't like the idea of that. I'm not saying it's like right or wrong. I'm just saying like that's not the life that I want to live. And going back to like, that's not what makes me happy. And so coming to this one, like one of my non-negotiables was wanting to build a company with friends. So David and I both put in, money of our own. And of course, like for the past 3 years, we haven't gotten paid. So that's kind of an investment. But we do have like some friends and family investors who are like our best friends, like people we go like on holiday trips with and all that. But the premise of that is so one day we could have investor retreats and all of our friends would be there. Cool. So we do have some capital from friends and family, but the primary reason is because of that, because I like that would make me happy.
Yeah. No, I think for me, I wouldn't. I would never take funding. I think the freedom is so much more valuable than any money someone will give you. Breathing down your back, asking you to kind of hit deadlines, hit goals. I think, for me, I wanted to build a really happy, a really good place to work with Sendable. And I think with someone else kind of over my shoulder, looking over my shoulder, I don't think that would have been possible. So I agree with you. Something you've said before is that you need to that you don't need to work harder, you need to work more creatively. Can you explain what you mean by this, and maybe kind of examples of how you can work more creatively?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this whole like, you know, I'm really busy. I can't respond to your email or your text, and I'm exhausted. Like there's this kind of like hustle porn, right?
Yeah.
And especially in, I guess, bigger cities like maybe LA, San Francisco, New York, like I was really surrounded by that. Like I used to work out of a co-working space in New York, and I will never forget a friend of mine tell me this. He's like, "How come you have so much free time? Like, aren't you CEO? Like, if I were CEO, I would never have free time." And I'm like, yeah, but like that doesn't equate anything. That just means like maybe you need to rethink the way you work. Because working more, working harder does not mean you're productive. It doesn't mean you're doing more. It doesn't mean you're more successful or that you're more worthy or you have more money, right? But it gets confused with that sometimes. And I think we have so many tools right now just at our disposal to enable us to automate so many things, right? To set some boundaries. Um, and so I think that we need to work more creatively in the sense of like, we need to think about like, what can we spend less time on and what tool can we use or what system can we use to do more of it? And that's kind of the premise of eWebinar, right? It's like, okay, yes, I can do like 2 Zooms or even like 1 Zoom or whatever, like a month, but it's a kind of exhausting on the day that I want to do it. Or I can make a video and deliver it through here and I can do it 100 times. And how much more productive is that? How many more people, how many more prospects and customers am I actually educating when I'm not there? So that's kind of what I mean by that is like, and also like, things like Upwork or, your network on LinkedIn. Like all of these networks allow you to hire people for really specialized skills at a fraction of the cost to remove things from your plate. Like things that might take me 4 hours to do will take someone else 1 hour to do. And for the first time, we have that at our disposal. We can hire someone anywhere in the world according to whatever budget we're willing to give, right? So I think we're in a really interesting time that allows us to be so much more productive if we can shift our mind away from working more equals productivity, because it doesn't. It's all about the outcome, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you have to set your own boundaries. Otherwise, like you're not going to have a life.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't work on weekends. Right. And I work like North American hours. I'm in Europe. So I work from like 2, 3 to like maybe midnight. But on my own terms, because maybe I'll go out for a couple hours and have a drink with a friend and come back. Right. But I think setting those boundaries and working more creatively will allow you to have like a better life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's something we did at Sendable where we introduced remote working, obviously before COVID. And I had a friend of mine who was saying to me, like, how can you trust your team to get the work done? They're all working in the US and South Africa, Australia, wherever they are. You aren't watching what they're doing. How do you know if they're getting the work done? So we basically had OKRs or like goals that we would set the team. If they hit their KPIs, if they hit their KPIs, I didn't care where they were working from, how many hours they were working, as long as they were hitting the goals. Like if you work 4 hours a week and you hit your KPI, that's fine to me, So yeah, I agree with you. Working smarter is way more important than working more hours. So yeah, a question for you. If you could go back in time and speak to the Melissa before you started Spacio, what would you have said to her?
Start an automated webinar company.
Back then even. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like, don't go into real estate tech. It is so, so difficult. Like, and like, I feel like part of my role right now, like when somebody comes to me for real estate tech advice, is like actively sway them away from doing it. Because like also like you're selling to customers that are like real estate agents or brokers that traditionally don't spend or adopt technology at the rate that you want them to. So like, yes, maybe there's an opportunity, but even like if you just look at the real estate tech market, like there's a Zillow, there's a Trulia, Zillow bought Trulia. Like there's just like just a few players at the top. Whereas like if you look at other industries, like there are there's so many large companies and like even mid-sized companies with really good outcomes, but in real estate that doesn't exist. But like jokes aside, I would say like pick something that is not limited by industries or language or geography. Because one of the hardest things I think with Spacio was because it was an open house sign-in product. So it was really just serving North America, but really just the US because Canada has a different model, has a different commission model. It could not get more niche than that. So like if there's a million agents, this many are like actually hosting open houses, and this many will actually like use technology instead of a piece of paper. So when we were struggling, like we couldn't just go to another industry, or we couldn't just be like, oh, let's be an office sign in, or like now let's be like a car dealership sign in. So that was super restricting. And that was like one of the reasons why I eventually just kind of lost passion for it, because it just was never going to give me the life that I wanted. And luckily, but like we did have a pretty good outcome because we became a part of a bigger company. But on its own, like it would never have been what I wanted it to be.
Just curious, I saw on your LinkedIn, did you sell after 2 years after founding the company? Is that how long you were running it for? Or 'cause that's a pretty good outcome.
No, we sold the company 2 years after the first person paid us $10.
Okay.
So it was like a long
That looks very
time.
impressive.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
a super long time. Like I had a company before that I ran for 4 years that morphed into this, also in real estate tech. I don't know why. Like that's the one thing. Like I don't know why I did that twice. But a lot of the time went to like iteration. So like the time that we found somebody, like we found the product somebody would pay for, to acquisition, like that was 2 years.
Okay. That's pretty good still.
Yeah.
Last question before we go. What would you say are your favorite business books or podcasts that you listen to?
Outside of this one,
Yeah.
I would say definitely you have to read The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. Like if you haven't read it, like I don't care if you're a technical co-founder, product manager, like CEO, like that. It's a sales book, but it helps you understand the human psychology behind like a well-structured presentation. Like how do you get people to buy into an idea that you're trying to sell? Steve Jobs did not write it like Carmine Gallo did, but it is like to this day the most impactful business book I've ever read. But also another book, Questions Based Selling, by Tom Fries. It's more of like an enterprise sales book, but it helps you understand like how do you run customer interviews and like demos so that you can use all that information to get to a close. Podcasts, like completely unrelated to business, but extremely funny. Blind Boy podcast. Definitely get on that. It's like this Irish dude with a plastic bag over his head because he doesn't want to be known. It's super funny. And one last one, not a business book, but very inspiring for entrepreneurs, is The Alchemist.
Cool. And obviously you have a background in sales. So I'm just curious, like, what do you think is the future of sales when people are kind of avoiding salespeople like the plague these days? And they come with all the information, all the research before they even buy from you. Where do you think salespeople have a place now in business?
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes from Trust Radius, there's a report that you can actually search for. I think it's like B2B buying disconnect. One of my favorite quotes, I think it goes something like 87% of buyers want to do their own research during their journey, and 57% of people actually buy without a sales rep. And I want people listening to think about what that means for your business, right? Like there's such a disconnect between like, hey, when I'm selling you something, I want to get you on a phone. I'm not giving you any information. If you want to request for a demo, you have to fill in a form and then I send you a calendar link. But when I'm buying, I want all the information transparent up front. Like that's the disconnect that it talks about. And why that's important is the people who understand that will know how to structure their business model and their information on their website and all those things to adjust to like where we are shifting, like as like consumers. I think the future of sales is community led. It's going to be based on social validation, and what that means for salespeople is if like I think traditionally salespeople, like me included, have been like the highest paid people like in a company, right? But I do think that will change. Like there are many like skill sets and expertise that I would pay like more than a salesperson. Number one is community building, marketing, like digital marketing, customer success, right? These are all positions that like that are kind of hard to hire for, that I would pay a lot more for. So I think what that means for salespeople is like if you're not the top 1% of the 1% of salespeople, and account management is not sales, you need to learn one of those other skills that could propel your career, or learn how to work with those departments and those leaders. Otherwise, like, I do think that just the average salesperson will become obsolete, because marketing and community is the new sales.
Awesome. Sorry, last question for you, but one more question. Just on community, like, could you define what it means? Like, what does community mean to you when it comes to business?
Yeah, and I'm still learning that. So I'm taking a course by Justin Welsh on, like, LinkedIn operating system, building an audience, how to write content. But I would think a community is a highly engaged group of people that cares about what you, or your community, like the theme of your community, has to say. Like, it's a group of people that want to learn from each other with like a shared interest. And like, I see a lot of people like starting to do that and doing a really good job of that, like whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's in like Slack groups and things like that. So if you have a community that you own, you can literally build anything on top of that. Because from experience, I can tell you, if you try to get another community to do something for you, it's a huge lift. They won't. And a lot of these communities are closed off to vendors.
Very good point. Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today, Melissa. Where can people find you online if they want to connect with you or follow your journey?
Definitely on LinkedIn, Melissa Kwan, Kwan. And of course, like, if you want to check out eWebinar, just ewebinar.com, exactly as it sounds.